This program is brought to you by the following non-paid sponsors: the League of Extraordinary Beings, the Society of Poor Knights of the Multiverse, Battle School, the deployed from Detroit School of Leadership and Madness, the Society of the Pale Horse, the Curiodrome, and of course, viewers like you.
Oh my god. Oh, I didn't time that. Oh, I didn't time. I was gonna hit the mute button, but my thumb's too big. Anyway, hi gang. How are you guys? Is it hot in here? Or is it just me sitting in front of a space heater wearing nylon hair? It's probably that. Let's get comfy. Let's settle in. It's the end of the week. Does anyone remember what we talked about last time? My dog's already yelling at me. Don't do it. Don't ruin the mystique. Should I wear it like this now? Wait. Just slowly. Like someone's poor grandmother. Everyone just is real cool about it. How about that? I look like I play guitar at a bar. I hit on your mom. I mean, we're not like popular, but the songs we play are very popular. Okay. Hey babies, alright. We're here to discuss leadership, not deal with me losing my mind. No one cares, right? Okay. Holy shit. So does anyone remember our Harrison Bergeron discussion last time? Yeah. I'm wondering if that was a mistake or... We'll see. It's too late. I'm digging it though. At a minimum, I know I'll be smoking a pot. Now, will that give you a good show? Don't worry though. It did give me this thought though, because the numbers were auspicious, one will say. The number of people who were notified versus the number of people who showed versus the number of people who returned reminded me of a story. So, at the beginning of the Lotus Sutra, which is this fun Mahayana Buddhist book, those are words you can go Google if you don't know them. You'll have a lovely time falling down those rabbit holes. But in this Mahayana Buddhist book, although I shouldn't say that because there's Theravada schools who like it too. So who knows. But anyway, it's kind of thought of as a Mahayana book and sort of thought of as by some people it's considered to be like an illustration of the beginning of the separation between Theravada and Mahayana and all that's in there. So my getting baked and all this and then seeing the numbers on like 40-ish to 20-ish made me very happy, made me think of this. Because at the beginning of the Lotus Sutra is not Once Upon a Time or any of that. There's actually a secret hidden first chapter that a lot of people don't find out about. I found out about. When I was studying the Lotus Sutra and discussing it with other sort of, what's a good word? Votaries? Is potentate? Is that an appropriate use of potentate? It's a fun one. But people who were read up on it, a lot of folks didn't get editions that had the introduction to it. They had chapter 1, which makes sense. Start with chapter 1. There you go. But in this initial introduction, this is where that sermon comes up where Buddha holds up a flower and just is like, mm? And people are like, what the fuck? So the gist of it, for those of you who don't know, for those of you who do, at the very beginning of this, he has this big conference. There's all these people who start following him. At the very beginning, Buddha has a lot of great ideas, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And before you know it, he kind of sees, like, I need to start getting some ducks in a row, going around and talking to people, catch up with them, make sure that they're kind of understanding what I was trying to go with, and just make sure we're all on the same page here. And because one of his big issues was the idea of teaching people in kind of their own language and not having to, because the thing he's trying to teach doesn't require additional language. It shouldn't require you learning Pali or Sanskrit or any of that. Problem is, Tower of Babel, things get lost in translation regardless. And so now there's people thinking they're going to get reincarnated, or there's ghosts living in the moon, or all kinds of wild shit. There's crazy ideas. So he's like, I'm going to have a conference. I'm going to get everybody together. So the first bit he does is the flower thing. And some people are like, And then other people are like, what is this bullshit? And at some point, he kind of makes it, he steps aside and says, this is the teaching. If I can't do much more than this anymore, like, if you can't understand it in this illustration, then you're not going to understand it. And not only that, and I think this is why it gets cut out of a lot of people's version, he says, not only that, this is the only way I can explain it to you because everything else has been a lie. Ish. Because it's not the truth. And what words do we have for things that aren't true? And the things that he said are on the way to true, real close to true, pointed at true, but he didn't think they were ultimately the truth. Plato had a similar kind of idea they ran into. And so they said, listen, I'm going to do my best to try and tell you what I really think is going on, my whole philosophy, this, that, and the other thing. Know that going into this, that I've essentially been bullshitting you this whole time, trying my best to describe a thing I can't describe. And tomorrow I'm going to try and describe it. And the way the myth went, half of them showed up and half of them didn't. And so anytime I have a class that shows up like that, I'm always like, and it's it's nice. It's actually really nice. Not that I'm Buddha, but it's fun to remember that story. Because like I said, it's not in print all the time. And so it's fun to have those little lessons. And I think about that so often too. We look back on these teachers and have, all this, what do we want to call it? Because for some it becomes a literal form of worship. Like, you know, not to drop names. But, and then for some, it's still not that far off from worship. Almost like these patron saints, these names they remember when they get in certain situations. I know I do it. I think about Jim Manley a lot when I'm instructing because he was my favorite teacher as far as like his ability to deliver information. I absolutely loved it. Okay, stoner rant. That's my brain as I cough your brains out. Did I turn my microphone on? Oh, thank God. I just looked down and one of them is gray, but we're okay. So last week we discussed, or began discussing, that's how we do this, class gang. Welcome aboard. Last week we were discussing beliefs, values, and norms were the part of the major section. We covered beliefs. Beliefs are portions of equations you keep in the back of your mind. They're x equals this until you find out for sure. And so you assume in these circumstances, this is likely to be what's going to happen. You believe. And values are how we rate or categorize those different beliefs. And so some beliefs that we have, if this then that, we want to reward and we want to bring forward and recognize the people who have those traits, and that's values. And that's what we mean by values. That's why value gets the same kind of word used with how much does that cost? What's the value on that? What's it worth? Regrettably, that got tied into money because, well, it's always been like that. Not always, but like maybe 10,000 years? A long enough time where like nobody's grandparents didn't have any good answers either. And so last week we covered the beliefs, covered the values. We didn't get into norms because that's after this. But some of the values we discussed were the basic core values of the Air Force, just because I was in the Air Force and I know those ones. And then the next four that we gave were courage, candor, competence, and commitment, in line with the Army 22-100. As it instructs, it gives these as these four basic values to uphold, and they're excellent. So we talked about courage, having physical versus moral courage, the willingness to be the one to take a hit, to be the one to sit through the horror, to endure trauma of the mental or emotional side. That is courage. If you're like, it does not mean you're not afraid. It means fear hanging on a sec because we got shit to do. We'll deal with that later. And like, really honestly, that's what it is. Like, if you ask very courageous people, oftentimes they'll give you a weird answer like, I was busy. Not so much like, it was for my country. Sometimes. But like, you're like, oh my God, it was crazy out there. How could you, how could you focus with this going on and that going on? Like, I had a job to do. What? Some people have difficulty understanding how, with all this other stuff going around, you could still be like, oh yeah, I have stuff to do. As if it's like a shopping list. But we'll get to that. We'll discuss that. Candor. My voice crackled there. Candor is, I think we really came to a nice way of describing it as the willingness to be yourself, the willingness to be vulnerable. I don't know if we mentioned vulnerable, if that came up so much in my description last week, but that's really kind of part of it. As much as having candor, like in a military setting, a lot of times somebody having candor will be put as the person who can speak clearly, will be a little uh, maybe rough in their speech or a little bit more abrasive. It's another word for rough, basically. But grating, that's another word for it. But someone with candor is going to tell you what's going on. They're not going to worry that they're not the right person to say it. They just know the shit needs to get said. That's candor. Is the willingness to be embarrassed for a moment. And it's probably not going to happen. In a lot of cases, our bodies are trained to assume a lot of awful shit's going to happen. That's how you survive. We just have to know that's what's happening when the alarms go off. And easier said than done. Trust me. Competence, know the thing, be able to deliver that knowledge when it's needed. And commitment, not just commitment to a task, but in some ideas, commitments to an ideal. Commitment is you assigning yourself that responsibility for that thing to happen. You telling the universe, I got this. I said this is going to happen. It's going to fucking happen. That's commitment. And then we discussed, I'm pulling my slides, getting those ready. We talked about General Benjamin O. Davis Sr. We talked about Tom Mooney. We talked about General George Patton. And we talked about General Jimmy Doolittle. Slideshow mode. There we go. Could you hear that? If you could, it was a dinosaur. It was definitely not me burping. Okay. General Benjamin O. Davis Jr., the O in his name also stands for, oh shit, here it comes. This individual was a consummate professional because they didn't have a choice. And that's not a fair way of saying it, but I had this thought today when I was going over my notes on him and his dad, who were, where's it at? Both early African American generals in the military when that wasn't quite a thing we did. And one of the thoughts I had is both Benjamin O. Davis Sr. and Jr., there is a sort of legend around them that they were not difficult to work for, because they weren't bad people. They were very, very good people from anything anyone's told me who's worked with them. They loved him. But they were sticklers for a lot of things. And if you go through, like one of the notes I'm looking at that I've got in there that stands out is when he was at West Point, he was given the silent treatment. Sure. Think about that. You've been in maybe a relationship and someone's just like, they're not talking to you. Okay. Now, how many students are there? Is it 1,000 per class or 1,000 total? Either way, it's definitely more than 4 or 5 not talking to you. It's definitely, it's a lot louder, that kind of silence. Um, and so they had to be that good. They had to be that sharp. They had to be that on top of shit, because if they ever slipped up, that'd be their chance. That's when somebody get them. They go, see? What I fucking tell you about these guys. That's why they never took naps. Can't be caught taking a nap. Anyway, slide time, right? So, courage. This is a quote of his about his courage. We were fighting 2 wars, one against the enemy overseas and one against prejudice at home. Widely cited sentiment. I don't know. Like, again, it's cited to him. I don't have a time date on that. Led pilots into combat while being doubted by his own country. He was an excellent, excellent, excellent combat aviator. If you don't know about the Tuskegee Airmen, the first one, there's a movie with Lawrence Fishburne in it that rules. I haven't seen Red Tails all the way through, and I feel bad about that. But that should tell you how maybe that. But give them both a shot. No greater air warriors in human history. Period. For those same reasons. If you have an entire, I think it was at a group level. So a group has squadrons in it, squadrons has flights in it. If that many people, and that's like 1,500-ish people, and none of them are allowed to slack, all of them are holding each other to the harshest fucking standard they can because they know whose eyes are on them, yeah, you're gonna have amazing results. Like, their case is so interesting to me as somebody who enlisted in 2003 and came up with a lot of like post World War II folks who were in Vietnam. And so by the time I was being instructed and everything, there was a lot of reverence for these folks. And it was almost like, because they were heroes, people assumed things were going to change. And interestingly, I think more white folks assumed things did change. They're like, "See, look," and then just kept being whatever level of like shitty they were. I don't know. It's a rough one. Like, as a trans person, who I got put out of the Air Force before all this happened, before I came out, so it wasn't an issue in my discharge. But had I stayed in and yada yada yada, alternate timelines, there's me with boobs in the Air Force. I'd be kicked out now. I'd be going through sort of a similar issue. And in like irony's sake, I was the don't ask, don't tell monitor for my unit in the Air Force, which means I was the instructor for the policy on how to hunt homos. Or go get you. It wasn't that. It wasn't. But there was a lot of weird shit. Like, you weren't authorized. This is language. you weren't authorized to have homosexual thoughts. Have you ever played that game where you're like, okay, nobody think the word elephant? Also, if you've ever been around more than 4 enlisted dudes, it's just dick jokes all day. This is the gayest place you'll be. Never saw more naked fellas in my life. It wasn't a good time. They were just there. Anyway, back to Benjamin O. Davis Jr. He'd appreciate this. He was in the Air Force. But these guys were an interesting example for me because they still went. I still went. When I was young, they said, well, tuck it in, and, well, don't tuck it in, but, like, what's the straight version of tuck it in? They said do that. And I did, because, we had a war and shit, and I figured that was more important than me singing and dancing or whatever the fuck I wanted to do. That's how I felt at the time. Candor. He spoke plainly about the reality of racism in the armed forces. He was very open about it through his service. He served into integration in the 1949 is when the service was integrated. By 54 is when he was, I think in 54 is when he got Brigadier General. Maybe. I gotta look at my notes again. But he was also very honest to the troops that were assigned to him while they were segregated, where, again, some of these folks had it in their head like, no, these guys have to treat me right. I'm a lieutenant. And he knew that. He was a lieutenant too back in the day. But he was also, he'd been there, and they weren't there yet. And so he was also very honest with his folks on what it was going to take for them to make the strides forward. And that it was going to take a lot of putting up with bullshit. And kind of grinning and bear it for some of it. Learning who you can take shit from and who you never have to again. And never do it again. That kind of stuff. Self-respect, like around this man and his father, there was always this cloud and aura of self-respect. And the people who were in their lineage, Jedi Padawan style, also emit this cloud of self-respect and like recognition of the capability of the human being. Like, not just what this person can do or that person because they're so-and-so, but what a stock model, off-the-shelf human fucking being can get done. And that's pretty cool. I like that. Competence. Earned respect through performance and discipline. Performance discipline. Again, I said, what choice do they have? Either do well or you're gone, dude. There were tons of people who wanted his job. And so even for his own personal sake of his career, he had to keep outperforming. There was not a day off for this dude. Tuskegee Airmen became one of the most successful escort fighter groups. They also became one of the first to be requested. Usually you get one assigned, and you're like, okay, we're all going to die together. And then there was this trend where people were like, hey, can we get them red tail fellas? Because we tend to survive with them. And so they'd get a request. And then, I think I haven't seen the second movie, like I said. But the first one I was talking about, Lawrence Fishburne in it, they do a great job of sort of dramatizing that, at least. It's for, I think it was a TV movie. They can't be all the way with it. But there's this great moment of them being like, oh, what the fuck? You tell me my escorts these black fellas? And they're like, yeah. And then these hillbillies are like, son of a bitch. Guess I'm not racist no more. And they're like, well, at least I'll try. And then they take off and they go. And shit, it's a little bit like that in the service for some folks. There's a silly phrase you will hear some recovering racists use, where they'll be like, oh, they're dark green, because everyone's green in the military. And they're like, they're dark green, they're light green. And you're like, okay, well, we know what you're talking about. However, like, it's this step forward, this recognition of like, okay, at a minimum, something about my categorization is off, and something about this, and something about that. But like, very rapidly, it doesn't fucking matter what you think as long as the job is getting done. And all of these beliefs fall apart the minute a task is handed. Like, the only time anyone has time to sit around and think stupid shit like this is when they're waiting for something to happen. And then after something has happened, these thoughts are never going to come out again. So a lot of time, these come from unused, unlived kind of critters who are like, I wonder what's going to happen if that happens, and I wonder if it's a What? Same shit as anything. People are people. You just burn easier. Oh, it's true. Look at me. Holy shit. I'm getting a sunburn right now. Commitment. Dedicated his life to proving black excellence could not be denied. Another person who got roped into that just out of the sake of doing his fucking job. Uh, and a lot of folks who are in these positions you're trying to get into, if out in the public you are someone who's like myself, and there's not a whole lot of you in that role, you're going to have to deal with people saying crazy, awful shit, and you just have to go, that's weird, and move on, and be fucking amazing at your job. And it's going to be taxing. And it's going to be a lifetime of work in some cases. But if you're down, then fucking get after it. No time like the present, babies. And they also stayed mission focused under constant pressure. They were constantly being tasked. They were running the escort unit with 8th Air Force. 8th Air Force was running daylight bombing over Germany, which was... It's almost like throwing airplanes away. It's insane. We talk about kamikazes being crazy, and we were throwing away 15 dudes at a time. We'd have... Let me... maybe I'll dig for it. But we certainly had days where I think there was like 800 lost in one day. Just air crew. Where there was this huge raid. Most of them didn't make it. And it was 15 and 10 per aircraft. And then like 8, 9 of them went down. And that's 80, 90 people right there. And then... Oh, I'm dyslexic, so that's probably what it was. I don't know. I'll look it up so I can tell you a little bit more accurately, so you can believe some of the things I tell you. No, but yeah, this is real, was real, is happening, was happening, and there's always going to be these two things happening in life. There is your sort of personal saga, the path that you're on right now, and then there is the sort of universal saga, the world saga, what the news is saying, what's going on out there. All the different birthdays and death dates, and who's here and who's not, and those two things are happening simultaneously. And so you could have this desire to prove yourself and be of service and be useful to people, like I did. And then there could be laws where they're like, yeah, but no. Then you got to make choices. And so I don't know if I committed to the right thing. I don't know if I could... you know, this is a thought I have to have as someone who's in the position I'm in now, who talks to the people I talk to. You know, I run into a lot of folks who want to join the military, and they'll ask me, should I, shouldn't I? Usually, by the time they're talking to me, they already have their mind made up, and they're going to, or you know, but they just kind of want to get a little insight. What's it going to be like? That's usually what it means. Sorry, I just blinked out because I thought of one person in particular. Commitment. So you're going to have your story, the things you want to do, and then you're going to have the story that the rest of the world is trying to tell itself, trying to tell you, everyone else, you know. And so, like, I committed to the outside story rather than the inside story. And there's still nobility to that. And, you know, I went the warrior route. I went and I didn't start my transition until we surrendered Afghanistan. Because I'm crazy. No. Because when they surrendered Afghanistan, it's like, oh, fuck this. I was like, I'm not even. I thought I missed the boat, basically. And then, after a while, I was like, oh, that bitch burned before we got on it. And so when you get into these things, you're committing to a lifestyle, but then you're going to be committing to how other people use people in that lifestyle. That may be, I mean, and that's kind of an excellent way to think about it, because in an identical, like in a good parallel for it, uh, think about sex. Sex rules, but then think about prostitution. And now that changes things. Mostly because of all of our weird skeevy behaviors and our beliefs, and we're going to get into that in the norm side of things too in a bit if we get to that at the end here. But what was I getting to? Da-da-da-da-da. You know what? I'm going to skip ahead because there's enough of these slides, there's enough of these things I'm sure I'll remember as we go on. But oh yeah, you're going to have to, you know, decide. It is better and it is nobler to commit outside of yourself and to commit to bigger things. But I guess where my thinking is wrapping and why I'm still stuck on that thought and so is because you're going to have to make the decision how much you can stick it out if who you're committing to is not also going to commit to you. And so them getting the silent treatment in school, them being sent on suicide missions, all this kind of shit is a lot of opportunities to quit. That's the gods going, you can get out of here anytime. And you have to say, nope. I said I'm fucking staying. That's commitment. Alright, next slide. Like I said, I promised. Okay. Violette Sabo. Might be Violet, because I think she was half English, half French. And I'm sure she was called both. She was cool. Regrettably, she was executed at the age of 24. So we didn't get to see how cool she could have continued to be. But she was born in Paris. Her dad was a British soldier stationed in Paris as a driver, I think, during World War One, who fell in love with an awesome lady. And so he stayed in Paris, and they had a kid, and that was Miss Violette. And she was a lovely lady, got into the arts a little bit, and she was corsetier, is maybe how you pronounce it. But she made corsets. And she was working at, what is the name of that store? It's a very, some people who know stores would know it, which is a hilarious thing to know. But it was like the Monbon or something. I miss it. Anyway. So, Violette is an SOE agent. That's is it the British? Why am I asking you? You can't respond to me. She was a British and French SOE agent. Okay, so yeah, that's my answer. Her husband was killed at El Alamein before her mission. El Alamein was a battle in North Africa, and it was fucking rough. And in her first mission, I think she was injured. I don't have the full details on that. The second mission, she was engaged in a firefight with German fellers in town, and she was captured. When she was captured, she was tortured and then executed out back when she refused to give up any details. She didn't say shit. 24-year-old girl. I say girl. Clearly a goddamn woman. She was a mother, by the way. Her and her husband had just had a daughter, and then in like June, I think. And then a few months later, October, is when the husband was killed. And then the next February is when she was executed. Courageous young lady. I'm sorry I can't tell you anything. What a great quote. To just, where are your people? I'm sorry, I can't tell you anything. Returned to France for a second mission after her first successful mission, after her husband was killed the first time. Courageous. Again, she was willing to stick it out, willing to take injury, willing to take suffering, emotional suffering, being away from her child, being away from, she wasn't able to attend to her dead husband to see to his remains. She was working. She had shit to do. Candor. Refused to betray her team under torture. There's rumor that she was a bit of a shit talker, which could be why they sped up her execution. Truthfulness expressed. Her truthfulness expressed. This is a tongue twister for me for some reason, so I'm not gonna say anymore. She wouldn't talk. Like, there was an honesty to her. We talk about candor being a thing about honesty, and in not, snitching, it was an honesty to her people. It was a commitment side thing again, but it was this like a continuing expression of her commitment to her people. Competence, highly trained in weapons, infiltration, field ops, badass young individual. Operated effectively under extreme pressure. Commitment, they completed all their missions knowing death was an option. They knew they just had their baby, who was off with babysitters while all of this is going on. She was mission first. All this shit was going on. She could have just been, and this is something some folks should consider, is Violette Sabo was a corsetier before the war started. She was just making bras at the store. Then all of a sudden, these motherfuckers had to come. And we had shit to do. She could have still just been making bras. Instead, well, she was making Nazis angry. That's a good thing. Alright. Unfortunately, not a whole lot on her, because, like I said again, she's killed at 24. There is tons more out there, more to read, more to... But as far as, like, biography notes, regrettably, like, Took her too soon. John Lewis. Do you guys know this guy? Recently, they passed away in 2000 and a something, 2020, and people were being either super shitty or super cool because everyone's being real political right now, and my team this and my team that, and yada yada. Here's the deal. John Lewis was a badass. John Lewis was not just an impressive American, but a powerful American. Not only, not only did they have clear vision, not only did they have clear drive, they had the will to see it executed. When they were a wee baby, they marched with Martin Luther King. They marched at the Selma March. At Selma, the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Look into that. Edmund, E-D-M-U-N-D, Pettus, P-E-T-T-U-S, Bridge. Selma. Just look up Selma. They cracked his fucking head open with a billy club. But 1987, he got elected to the House of Representatives. So not only did he march and try to get these issues known and get legislation put forward to get these things squared away, but he also got into legislative office to make sure it happens, to hold other people accountable. He wasn't just going to hope things changed. He was going to get behind the wheel if he could. And he did for a very long time. Courageous. So, his courage quote. I was willing to die for freedom. It's a good thing to die for. I wouldn't go do it right now. Take your time, get a plan going. But, on a list of things, get in good trouble. Necessary trouble. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. If you are a problem, be a problem I can assign to other problems. Yeah. That's how you live your life. That's how you become a goddamn hero. That's the A-team. That's all those people. If you really are one of them, like my people, hey, there's this great quote that often gets misattributed to a lot of different people, and I don't know who actually said it. But it goes a little something like this. It's better to be inside the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in. So if you gotta piss outside. On the John Lewis slide. Good Lord, it's not like this when I am in front of people. It is a little. John Lewis spoke truth to power for decades without becoming cynical. There was never, despite hearing the same shit over and over and over again, they understood the cause, like, where so much of this was coming from, that some of it was to be expected, because until that hose gets turned off, like, you're still going to get these floods. And a lot of hoses are still loose. And he didn't let it, like, break him. He didn't become mean or nasty or nothing. He was an excellent example of integrity. We said before, integrity is the ability to maintain sort of suchness under stress, to stay you when things go rough. And he really did have a great sense of integrity. He ended up getting sick towards the end, and even through that he could be counted on. He would not accept polite lies in place of justice. He was not going to put up with your bullshit. He was not going to put up with your, like, oh, well, what if we did like separate but equal? And like, fuck you, dude. he was, I, he didn't say it like that. He was far more eloquent. Again, he was one of those guys under the microscope who didn't have the luxury of being as foul-mouthed and loose as I am. They had to be, you know, P's and Q's, I's and T's, and on top of it. Competence. They organized and executed strategy from the committee level, freedom rides, marches, you name it. They were there. They understood how to get people going. They were a good natural leader. They could get groups of people on the same path. And that's half of leadership. Commitment. Never ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble. Oh, so it's continuing of that same quote from up there. I really need to review my quotes. And he stayed at the fight his entire life. Like, literally dropped dead in office. It's hard to think of other examples of politicians who, in the modern era, we can look to and be like, this guy ruled. A lot of times, there's people who have this, like, Game of Thrones ego interest. They're trying to prove something. And what you see sometimes in instances like this with Representative Lewis, with General Davis, is that pressure causing this like lensing, this microscoping thing that in its reverse really does let a lot of shitheads through. Because while everyone's like, well, what's this guy doing? Fucking Smokey and the Bandit are way back there just fucking everything up. And man, just a lot of history books are just that over and over again. Like, come on, guys. Alright. Claudette Colvin. Do you guys know this name? You might. Do you know the name Rosa Parks? I don't know if she rolled the R. But Rosa Parks is known for refusing to give up her seat and starting the what was the official fun name for it? It was a movement. Montgomery bus something. Started in Montgomery, Alabama, like all good parties. And so Miss Parks was told, "Hey, get up! You're not supposed to be sitting up here for white fellers." And she's like, "Nope." Became famous. Well, Claudette did it first, but she was pregnant and 15, so they kept that shit quiet. And they didn't quite stage Rosa Parks. And I want to be very fucking clear about this, because some people get all conspiracy theory and like, well, then they staged it. Nah. Claudette said, no. I ain't getting up. I'm pregnant. My feet hurt. She got in trouble, whole thing. But she fought for herself. She went to court. She, I believe, 1956 plaintiff in Browder vs. Gale. As the plaintiff ended the thing. She's the one who... Rosa Parks made it famous. There's Rosa Parks Avenue. There's all these things. And I think this is more of... Like, if we want to point fingers at somebody, I think this goes more towards our sort of, like, Judeo-Christian industrial complex. This idea that, you know, certain people deserve aid and respect more than others. And that's really what happened in her case, is she was a little girl, and they're like, we can't put her on TV. It wasn't TV back then, it was the 50s. But there was TV then. Anyway, that was, newspaper was probably there first, like, we can't be on Uh, so let's talk about Claudette. Uh, her quote on courage. It felt like Harriet Tubman was pushing down on one shoulder and Sojourner Truth on another. So she knew. She had been growing up in that era with these heroes and these icons, and she'd known the fight had already started. And I think this is something for people to understand too. Is she had known the fight had already started, and so she wasn't. And I think this is why the youth are so quick to pick up fights like this, because in their mind they're carrying a thing on, they're continuing, they're stepping in, where some people have it in their mind that oh, that's a matter of yesteryear, we don't do that anymore around here. Meanwhile, it's happening right in front of them. And yeah, that momentum of like, now's not the time to quit, now's not the time to give in. I think that's a really sort of interesting statement she made. Candor. She told the truth about segregation when adults wanted silence. That was a big issue. America's always had an issue with kids. We don't know what to do with them. It's I wouldn't say a uniquely American problem, but it's kind of funny because we were one of the first places to have extra kids early. Like, a lot of places, their babies just die, and then you get one or two that make it through. And then we were the first to have like whole messes of kids live. And we're like, what the fuck do we do with these little things? They're so mean to us. And their music is different. I don't like it. So America's always had a weird relationship with the youth. Uh, she refused to accept the lie that she was less than anything. Because she was black, because she was a woman, because she was 15, because she was pregnant. Do you think the fella that did that was an upstanding, like, she wasn't married at 15? And I don't want to get too far on women's history, but, well, that's usually not an awesome scenario either. Competence. She understood her constitutional rights as a teenager and became a plaintiff in the Browder v. Gale case ending bus segregation in the city of Montgomery. And this commitment, it took action before the movement was safe. She was the first. She wasn't in part of a bus movement. There wasn't anything anybody was talking about. She was just tired enough that one day to not get up. And she paid a lifelong social cost. She, I think, by like the 50s, she did her case, and then she was gone. She was off the scene. They didn't want her on it. She moved to New York City. She was doing all right, and she was just kind of quiet there. Just did her own thing. I think they didn't clear her police record until 2021, which is from this instance, which is fucking wild. But she's an interesting case. She has all these traits of a leader, and she could have been a great leader. And the people around her who could have cultivated her into a leader decided not to, because like, wow, we can't have this bitch doing it. And that's a thing you will see as a leader. You will see that the bigger the chain of command you get into, the more opportunities you'll have to see something like this, where you will see people being used by bad leaders. And I'm trying to think of an analogy or a metaphor that works well for it, but it's like a good leader can keep a candle lit forever, for absolutely ever, and a bad leader will burn that fucker out in a day. And for the same reasons. And you'll see that often. And so you'll see a lot of people who shoulda, coulda, and who really would have made great things happen had they been given those opportunities. And all I can tell you is just keep your eye out for those people and give them those opportunities when you are the person who can give them to them, or you know, pass people's names on. Keep people in mind. Keep relationships. Keep conversations going. Keep them. Keep talking to them, and something will come up, and maybe you'll have a place you could bounce them to. But always remember those people, because there will be a need for them. There already is. And we can only hope that maybe we can catch up in such a way that we can all kind of work together. Let's hope. All right. Slide time. Oh, shit. Do you guys know the name Chesty Puller? If you were in the Marine Corps, you do. If you dated a Marine, you probably do. If you lived with Marines, you probably do. It's a very popular name. If you saw... Is it in Full Metal Jacket? Did they mention it in Full Metal? They might. Anyway, Chesty Puller was an officer in the United States Marine Corps. They served... a while. Trying to find the first engagement. So they were after World War One. They don't have service there, but after World War One they served in Haiti, Nicaragua. Then they did World War Two. Then they did Korea. So they were just fighting their little ass off. 5 Navy Crosses. This picture is specifically when they were leading the evacuation out of Chosun in Korea. In that situation, they were wildly outnumbered. Like 10 to 1, 100 to 1, something big numbers. We'll just say that in my dyslexic speak. Big fucking numbers. And Chesty said, "We're all going home. Every last one of us. Dead, alive, kicking, screaming, doesn't matter. We're all going. Everybody's coming." And they did it. They pulled it off. Outnumbered, in the cold, in the mountains. Here they go in the snow. Bebop-a-doo. I'm sure there's 1,000 songs about it. It is a thing of myth for the people who did it, let alone the people who hear about it, who grew up hearing about it, who have to read about it as like, well, this is what you might have to do one day. What? They were surrounded. His quote is, "We're surrounded. That simplifies our problem of finding these people and killing them." How fun is that? That's very United States Marine. But, I mean, he ain't wrong. And it's also a great way of, it's a lot of folks, it's how I tuck my fears away, as I'll get silly in the moment. Like, well, at least we know where they're at. And say goofy shit like that. Just cause, I don't know, would you rather I cried? Like, no, I'm gonna do that instead. Candor. Let's see their candor quote. "Remember, whatever you write, this was no retreat. We found more Chinese behind us than in front of us, so we about-faced and attacked." And that's basically true. In a wild sense as well. They were surrounded, and technically they ended up going backwards to the base they started at, but they mowed through a whole bunch of motherfuckers to get there. Sometimes it gets called the tactical advance to the rear. There's a lot of fun names you'll see pushed around on that. But usually Battle of Chosun Ridge, Chosun Valley, Chosun Evacuation, Chosun It's spelled C. It's on the bottom of the picture there. IN. But they pronounce it kind of like a long A. Competence. We're surrounded. Okay, yeah. That's also an excellent sign of like moving on kind of thought of like we're surrounded, sir. Yeah, no shit. Now what? Those are excellent thinkers because they're already done being surprised with whatever the surprise is, and they're moving on to the next thing. And so they were able to plan in real time because they were fun, which and they were not fun in the classical sense. Like they would not be a great hang for a lot of you. For some of you, it would be the best time of your fucking life. For most of you, it would be awful. I'd probably have a good time. um, but there is this ability to just take the emotional hit and then just move into the intellectual space and go, okay, we're outnumbered. Well, what do outnumbered people do? How about these things? And just start moving into playing and moving into thinking. And what's your thought? What's your thought? And cheerlead in the moment and get people thinking. And that's really a lot of, if you read through the biographies and the descriptions of their type of leadership, it was a very energetic. And again, this was another person with a sort of like aura of leadership where all the people that came from their orbit had this sense of resilience. This, and again, kind of in the same sense of like a confidence in the capability of the individual human being. Like they know what people can do, and it doesn't make you fearless, but it makes you the thing right next to it, and that is dangerous. And then commitment. There we go. I love this line because it is true. I swear to God. Take me to the brig. I want to see a real Marine. Holy shit. Young Marines, this is not me trying to tell you to go get in trouble. What I will tell you is all the most important people in my life, not all, but many, have been NJP'd or held in the brig in the Marine Corps. I don't know what's with you fellas. I love it though. They send you to pirate school and they get all mad when you get all too piratey. Whatever. Drinking, fighting, fucking cussing, all that good shit. You just do it on an off day and then they get all fussy with you. But I'll tell you what. Yeah. If someone says that, they're a Marine and they're a Lance Corporal or whatever, I don't. That's a lot of times that's not always the end of it. Because they're like, yeah, I got retired out as a Lance Corporal. And I'm like, tell me more, Gunny. And that happens in a lot of instances where a lot of dudes, they get paperworked or they get jacked on some shit and their discharge has a lower grade than what they earn. But it's the fucking truth of the matter. Those are the real Marines in most instances. Sure, there's dirtbags. Sure, there's shitheads. Sure, there's that. But I'm telling you, in my honest to God experience, the E7s, 8s, and 9s I know from the Marine Corps who I would trust with my life and the life of other people to keep it going or end it have all had brig time, have all lost a stripe or two through an NJP or something like that. And I wasn't in the Marines, I can't tell you why. But the stories I run into are a lot of them keeping on, them maintaining, and usually, sometimes there's struggle, but really what you run into is like, even if there is a struggle, they're struggling in the midst of having more integrity than some of their superiors. And that fucking, yeah, it runs into problems. And in the Marines, there's this rule where they can just send you to jail. So, like, you don't have to break a rule. You don't have to even, like, you have to break a law. You have to break a rule. They can be like, fuck you, dude, and just lock you up. I thought that was wild when I heard that. But it also kind of, I was like, oh, that's, well, you guys are in there. Cool. And it's a fucked up joke, but goddamn, things like that, you know, when you hear things like that, listen, keep it in mind. These little axioms that come from lifetimes of service. But the real ones are the ones doing it. And again, not to pop on me, but like another thing I've said recently, sort of related to this, is someone talking about, you know, folks see all these mistakes I make. And I hope then, and this was my response, is it would be my hope then that people would know that that's you trying. That's anybody fucking up is trying. Anybody not fucking up is not trying. Maybe. I don't know. I'm a little stoned. That one doesn't sound right. But the first part's good. Yeah. Yeah. People do need to fail to try. You need to test things out. You need to fumble. It's how we gain finesse and technique, is by fucking it up and then going, ooh, I'm not going to do it like that again. And then we come up with a new technique. If we ever, no one does anything perfectly the first time. If you do, it's spooky. Because it's weird. It's uncanny. It's like, no one like, if someone just picks up a trumpet and plays it after having no experience, they don't know how to do the breath work, they don't know how to make the mouthpiece work, they don't know any of the charts, any of that stuff, and they just, they're going to assume they're possessed by the devil, insane, brain injury. They're not going to assume they are naturally good at the trumpet, because that is not natural. Same with you. Whatever skill, I want to be good at guitar. And then you pick up a guitar and you go, "Brah, I suck." Yeah, for now. But don't be afraid to be out there fucking up and be seen fucking up. And if you need to, be your own marketing person and say, hey, this is me trying. If you're just paying attention to the blooper reel, like, let me run you through my successes here. And maybe you should too. All y'all have lists of successes. We all do. Everybody does. They're like, I haven't done anything. Nobody gives a shit. And then you start making a list. Like, well, I did this. And that's pretty cool. I did that. That's not as cool, but did that. That's remembering it. To the point. Virginia Hall. Oh, it's already midnight. I think I'm just going to end it. I got way too baked at the beginning of this. That's my fault. That's on me. I had a great time. I hope at a minimum, if you sat through this, you were able to glean something of use. And I wasn't just off the goddamn wall. We will, let me run through on this. We will be talking about Virginia and Marsha P. next time. And then we will burn into norms, cover. I kind of like that then. Because there's a lot on, not a lot, but there's more yapping. And so we'll go over their examples, Virginia and Marsha. Because, of course, I'll talk kind of, again, we'll cover everybody else here. Alright, let me do a quick little run through of this section again. Do-do-do-do. Not the whole thing, I promise. Beliefs, values, norms. We talked about that. What beliefs are. We discussed that these are can and can't, is and is, will and won't. Things you're not sure, but you're pretty sure. Values. This is your opinion on whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. And so, basic values we held were courage, candor, competence, and commitment. So we seek these in people, we value these, we reward people for having these and displaying these. We talked a little bit about the Air Force's core values. Courage, moral and physical courage, about being willing to take harm, to endure horror, and endure it with other people, for other people, on behalf of other people. But it is the willingness to be there. Candor. Whoa. Dogs are fighting. What? Don't you? No! No! Don't yell at me. Oh my. Hang on. I'm so sorry. My little chaos lords. So candor is like those little bastards yapping at you. I may be. Ooh, what is the word to describe a person having candor? It's not candorful. Candorous? Candorly? No, that sounds dumb. I may be a little too frank, open, honest this evening, but it's about trust. Okay, you may not trust that I am on my game this evening, but you can still trust that it's me. You can still trust that what's coming is, if the shit's coming from my brain fuzzy, at a minimum, anything being delivered from my heart is still going to be good. It's still going to be authentic. It's still going to be me. That is my hope always with this program, at least. And why I mix it the way I do. I want to see if it helps. One, if it gets the material across in a way that's productive, outstanding. Two, yeah, that's fun for me too. Competence, knowing the job, being able to do the job. Commitment, hanging out, we covered it. Brigadier General Benjamin O. Davis Sr., the O stands for Oh Shit, He's Coming. We talked about him. We talked about Thomas Mooney. They were a labor organizer in the early part of the 20th century. Talked about General Patton. Talked about General Jimmy Doolittle. Talked about General Benjamin O. Davis Jr. Talked about Violette Sabo. Talked about John Lewis. Talked about Claudette Colvin. And we talked about General Chesty Puller. And then next week we're going to talk about Virginia and Marcia. Okay, gang. So, what do we think? Do we have any thoughts yet? Do you have any kind of hard and firm opinions? Anybody agreeing or disagreeing on anything just yet? It's okay if you are, if you aren't. There were these Geico commercials. I won't tell the rest. It's an army book, so it's meant to be approachable material, and I'm trying to think of what was the. This isn't stuff to take for granted as, oh, this is throwaway information, or this is so simple that it's something sort of readily mastered. But what this is attempting to do and providing is inundating you with language to prepare you to work in these spaces where these activities are happening, where these kind of thoughts and these kind of plans and these kind of decisions are being made. And it prepares you to talk to other people who do those kinds of things, and talk to yourself, and talk to the people you're working for and with and around. So this is a preparation thing. But it's also going to have a lot of things repeated. It's going to have a lot of points made over and over again, just so that they're made over and over again. So don't worry about being lost or in or out of any kind of moments with this. Have it on in the background, stare at it pie-eyed, however you feel like it. What's important with leadership, and however you absorb it, whomever you absorb it from, is don't worry about me so much, or whoever else you're going through at any moment or any kind of period, but like, always be authentic to yourself. You're the one who's going to have to do this shit. And so if you forego that authenticity to yourself, and it's probably not the best way to say that, but if you skip that part of it, we talked about commitment to self, commitment to things greater, commitment to oneself. I got burnt out of the service. I didn't last. I made 10 years ish, and then and so there is something to be said for that. Okay, I'm gonna call it. It's already getting into way too late. I appreciate you guys hanging out. If anyone has notes, leave them. If anyone's got comments, leave them. Yeah. I'll see you Sunday.